my friends, and welcome to episode 119 of the Kiss Army Nation podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Pasquale Berry.
And I am Claudio Spera. Welcome to the show, everyone. We're really happy to be here with you again. From the early days when the band auditioned for Epic Records' Don Ellis till now, 50 years later, the Kiss image has been a signature differentiator in the music and rock world. We can be proud to say that no other band in the world has broken into the scene with such a disruptive visual impact. As such, our topic tonight will be to discuss the band's outfits and costumes, including makeup, over the years. From homemade t-shirts to full production scale design, we have seen it all. We will discuss the image at the group level, and perhaps in later episodes, we can discuss the costumes evolution for each one of the members. To get on board with this fun adventure, we are once again joined by our friends Patrick De Montigny and Craig Haddon. Hope you're doing well, guys.
How's it going?
Welcome to the show, boys.
Thanks. Always fun.
So normally at this time, we have the off-the-topic question. We're going to forgo that question because I think tonight's episode is going to be pretty broad. So my question to you is, how are you going to approach the topic of Kiss costumes throughout the years? In other words, what perspective are you going to take? Patrick?
I know Claudio mentioned about the evolution being discussed in another episode, but I don't think we can't do it a little bit now because there is such a far cry between the beginnings and to the Dynasty era per se. So I'll give my opinion on what I think works and what doesn't, and why the good side and bad side of everything.
Okay, Greg.
Yeah, the same thing. It's we're looking at the evolution of makeup changes. We're looking at evolution of cumbersome uniforms, costumes compared to basic mean black and silver. Then take that approach.
Okay, Claudia.
Well, in terms of perspective, that's a really interesting question. So because as we said, we've seen it all. But to me, what I took, it's going from the early days to these days with the end of the road. And to me, the most important thing is the visual impact. Let's say that if I see a picture of the band, the four of them, because we're not going to discuss each one of the members individually, but to me, what stands out compared to other eras is the power of the image of the four of the guys together. So to me, I see that as an entity. And if I see a poster or let's say an album cover or something like that grabs my attention, that means that there's something really, really powerful, visually speaking. That's the perspective I'm going to take.
Okay. I've been thinking about this one, and it's difficult because I don't want to compare one era over another era, which one I like better. I don't even want to look at it in terms of which eras am I more emotionally attached to or invested in. I don't want to do that. So I thought about this. I thought I want to look at this in terms of the evolution of the costumes in general, not individual members, but in general. Looking at Craig's background, the Dynasty background, the Dynasty costumes, I want to tackle this in terms of how the costumes of particular eras was A, sign of the times, mm-hmm. B, part of the evolution of the band, and C, it's not only a sign of the times, but it's also a sign of how the band tried to buck the system, try to be different, but at the same time, not so different, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the perspective I want to take.
Love it. So, as you all know, at the Kiss Army Nation podcast, we so love challenges. So from our various perspectives, this might be a tricky discussion. So let's kick it off, Pask. Let's go.
Okay, obviously we have to start in 1973, when the band burst onto the New York scene. We're going to time travel a little bit, back to the loft on 10 East and 23rd Street. So what is your take of the 1973 outfits, Craig?
If you look at them, they're budgeted, right? It's not like it's flamboyant like the Dynasty and Unmasked days. It's more black, silver, skull and crossbones on Jean's costume, Paul with the bandit makeup, going back to the star makeup. They're looking for something that works, something that will fit their image. From what I heard, some kind of interviews saying at the end of the night when they took off their costume, it's just like they put them out to dry and they stunk and it wasn't the best quality material stuff.
Yeah.
When they're putting it on the next night, it's still wet. It's like putting your hand in a sweaty hockey glove. But there's basic makeup changes too with Peter's makeup. They're looking for some kind of a stable that would work, right? And they want to look mean, they want to look different, they wanted to be that bizarre shock rock and take it from where it comes from.
Okay, Patrick.
Yeah, I think in a way, what I like about the early costumes is that it gives the impression that they're very underground. There's still like a homemade approach, which is very appealing to me. As far as I'm concerned, I think it looks so genuine, and you can see they were young, and I even I remember when I was in high school having arguments. I remember there was even a gig. I don't know why they had like the higher parts of their costumes, but they're playing in blue jeans with the boots and everything. And people said, no, but I did see it. And I think you can look it up. There are some photos. So it's really like humble beginnings. So that's the appeal of the early era, very early, like 1973.
Yeah. Okay, Claudio?
Well, I'm 100% with Pat. To me, it has some kind of, it's so attractive to me, knowing that these guys, they were starting from scratch, and they were trying to put pieces together, but still trying to differentiate from the dolls. At that time, they didn't want to fall into the Max Kansas City kind of stuff. They just wanted to be rock and roll, playing maybe around Manhattan and playing Long Island and Queens and all those dark places. And to me, those outfits reflect the kind of places that they were playing at that time. So you cannot imagine those guys playing with those outfits at Madison Square Garden. So it was really, really humble, dark, raw, and I loved it. And particularly knowing that members of the families were doing stuff, the T-shirts and, Peter's sisters doing stuff for them. Really, really interesting. And in terms of makeup, well, there were a lot of changes. And that's something really, really cool now that we've seen some footage surface, with the bandit and some other stuff. And, the makeup, rolling out the faces because of the sweat. Really, 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 I have to say primitive, and I love it. I love it. Pasc, what's your take?
I think, for something to evolve, it has to have a beginning. And this was definitely one heck of a beginning for the band. They were trying to find themselves in terms of their music, their stage performance, their makeup, their costume. But it's kind of difficult to sort of try to find yourself in terms of the costume when you have no money, So they try to basically scrape together anything they can to look cool. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that I'm looking at these costumes in terms of a sign of the times. Obviously, the 1973 era costumes were not a sign of the times per se, but I can imagine being in their heads thinking, we have to look larger than life in a sweaty dive of a club. What should we look like in this particular dive? And you know, when you look at these costumes and the glitter kiss and the skull that Gene had, stuff like that, it fits that scene, you know. And the minute you walk, I can imagine walking into a club and seeing the band for the first time in these costumes and going, hey, wait a minute, who are these guys?
Yeah.
They look incredible.
Yeah.
It wouldn't work, like you said, Claudio, at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
But at a club, it's larger than life. You know, it's incredible what these guys do, man. You look at them at a huge venue, and those costumes and the makeup, they look larger than life. And they could do that on a smaller scale as well. These guys were so ahead of their time in terms of what they were trying to create. And from the very beginning, they always gave us that illusion that they were larger than life superheroes.
Yeah.
And these costumes really reflected that. And what a start to an amazing 50-year career with this band.
Absolutely. You know, it's yeah, it is exactly as you said, you know, and you know, at that time we all know the band was kind of trying to get you know, on continuous touring and trying to promote themselves. So they were moving at the speed of light, also in terms of developing their image. And in this specific domain, I guess we all agree that the involvement of Sean Delaney and Bill O'Coin was key for them, right? So if we move forward to 1974, do you find a significant development compared to the very early days? Or do you think it was still raw and, let's say, homebrewed? Pat, what's your take?
I think it was a mix of both, because the costumes, you can tell they evolved a little bit, especially with Ace wearing the V-neck here that he had, and Gene having some studs on his wings and that kind of thing. So you can tell that, oh, it's starting to be more definitive, yet they still have that street approach, I think. So it was a mix of both. Hotter Than Hell was a major step, like, oh, okay, they're starting to define their personas. So yeah, I think it's a mix of both for that. I think Hotter Than Hell was the last hurrah that it still looked street.
Yeah.
It became something else.
And as Pasca was saying before, and there's still no money there, you know, to invest on super production for costumes. So yeah, that's interesting. Craig, what do you think?
Yeah, I just think it's a continuation of 74, where they had low budget for your costumes and for media and stuff like that. But I think that the introduction of Bill and Sean gave them a voice. It gave them a way to communicate with the record industry to get what they wanted. They had a vision. They didn't know how to communicate it, I think. And once they had management behind them, I think that gave them some clout, and I think it moved them forward to where they wanted to go and what they wanted to do.
Basque?
I agree with what Claudia was saying. I think if we just left it to the four members of the band, in terms of ideas, so where they're gonna or how they're gonna move forward, would have been limited. It's these outside influences that I think helped them to evolve and develop their personas, their look, and obviously their stage antics. But again, this is really fun, because in answering these questions, I'm trying to get myself into their heads. And I agree with Pat. You know, I could see them, you know, oh, let's add a little bit of this, let's add a little bit of that to make it look a little bit more demonic, a little bit more spacey, you know. Yet at the same time, it still fits with that, like Pat was saying, with that street look, but that look that really fits the club scene. And again, putting myself in their heads, did they ever see themselves, although they always said, you know, they're going to be the biggest band in the world, but did they actually envision themselves being that larger than life biggest band in the world? But what they had at the time playing these clubs, they were the biggest thing at the time.
Yeah.
You know, and these little additions to their costumes made their looks even bigger, which parallels what they did later on when they became Super Kiss with these big elaborate costumes. they did nothing different between 73, 74, and let's say 77, 78.
It's true. It's true. In my case, I think it was still, as Pat was saying, still raw, but there was some development already taking place. But I just want to point out also on the live performance. Here we start to see, if I remember well, that was the in concert, right? So that when they first appeared on TV, mm-hmm. and everything was new to them, and they were trying to get used to the new costumes and how to move on stage. But you already started to see the big involvement and help from Sean Delaney with the choreography and how they were moving, and all the stuff. And that also makes part of the image. When you are in front of the stage, you're not only looking at the outfits or costumes, but you see the full thing, and the bombastic, they're already starting, big time. There was some interesting money put there for the show. What I think you guys remember, there was a photo session when they're walking the streets of New York, and they even go to the Central Park on those outfits. That to me, that's really, really amazing. Much more. Not so much a mix of color at the very beginning with those strange pants. Now it was really black and silver, and they were trying to make a signature stamp, to the market. So yeah, I really like that area too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I thought what was funny, not funny, but what's iconic to me is that when they're on that ABC thing, and he walks up to the mic, Paul, and he goes, "Hello world, we're Kiss. You got nothing to lose," or something. When have they said that recently? It's like, you wanted the best, you got the best, right? And it was like, hey, hello, we're alive, we live here, I think the word that we're looking for maybe too is dangerous. You're raw, you're young, you're this, you're dangerous. It's if that's a word or not, but that's my take on it.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Good take. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, that also begs the question, right? How long did they continue to be dangerous? Because now we're looking at 1975, which was obviously an inflection point in history, due obviously to the success of Alive. Now, what unique things about the band's outfit, costumes, and makeup do you think made that particular era, in terms of the costumes, so special? Claudio, start with you this time.
Well, to me, it's really hard to kind of separate now each one of the members, because I have to say that to me, when I look at the cover of Alive, which is my favorite of all time, it is very, very hard to me to keep my eyes off Gene Simmons. The stuff that he came up with, even though it was not that different from 74, but it has some interesting changes that to me made the full thing click. And Ace too, Ace, it was different. The stuff wasn't there anymore, and to me, it even looked more dangerous, as Craig was saying, more rebel than 74, and they were on fire. In terms of a live show, I think they were really on fire, and things, were starting to happen. And to me, the image came along, with kind of maybe the mood and the spirit that the band had at that time.
Claudio, I want to ask you: do you believe the goal of the band was to be rebels, or to be larger than life, or both?
I don't think that their intention was to be rebels. Never, never, ever for Kiss. Maybe that's what they kind of transmitted, with the image. But no, I think no, I don't think they were trying to be the bad guys. I don't think so.
Okay, Pat.
Yeah, to answer your question, when I think about rebels, I think more of a band like the Rolling Stones. Those guys were the true rebels in terms of, being, outlaws or whatever you want.
The bad boys of rock and roll.
Exactly. As far as kids goes, I think it's more larger than life. I think that was their approach, and they wanted to. Each guy, as I said previously, started to develop their own personas, and I think, yeah, with Alive or Dress to Kill, Alive or Raw, the costumes were more definite. Ace had his lightning bolts on both sides. Gene's costume looked demonic, and Paul had his chest like that, so because he was like the sexy one in the band. And Peter, had like crosses. And, I think in 73, 4, they could have switched costumes within themselves. And I don't think it would have mattered. But now they were at a point where it's like, okay, each guy has his own persona, his own design. With Alive, that was the start of it. And I think they were still raw nonetheless. When you have to watch the Cobalt Hall's shows on Kissology, and there's a band that is absolutely firing on all cylinders.
Oh yeah.
So it didn't affect their playing. So, but they still had that underground. I like to call it semi-underground. Up until Alive, they were sort of an underground band.
Mm-hmm.
But now with this becoming larger than life, it's like, ooh, okay, you have those people. Okay, we have got to check out these guys.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I never thought of it that way in terms of the early 73 outfits. It could have been interchanged. It would have made a difference. That's so
awesome.
true.
So.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Craig, what do you think?
Yeah. Basically agree with what Pat and Claudio were saying. And just to add to it, to me, I think it's more of they want to be the band that they want to see, right? So they just created their own image, created their own personas, that larger than life philosophy started with, they started even more with the secrecy of who they are behind the makeup, and they started with the hiding the faces just a little bit after that. I think they would not dangerous as and not even rebel. It's more like Pat was saying, nailed it with the underground band. These guys are selling out shows, but yet they're not selling records. So I think the debut of Alive was like, wow, now we're on the map. Now we get it. Now we understand what it's all about. And then the sales started going up. I think that whole Alive album was the stepping stone for their career, and I think that's credit to Bill and Sean for that, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The reason I asked you guys that question was because I agree. I don't see them as rebels or the bad boys of rock. They were always trying to be larger than life. Now, how can I say this that's going to make sense? Like 25 years ago, I was larger than life. I was huge, and I lost a lot of weight. But before I lost the weight, I remember the clothes that I was wearing. I was never very comfortable with my body, with myself, and the clothes that I wore was a reflection of that. And I remember when I lost all that weight, I lost like 75 pounds. And when you lose 75 pounds, it changes your life. Mm-hmm. It changes your image of yourself, And it was really a transition to redefine myself in the clothes that I wear. And that's how I see Kiss's outfits in 75. What they're wearing now, to them, it's like, okay, this is the band that we want to be. Now they look like that larger than life band. They look like that band that could play Madison Square Garden and stand out as the huge monster of a band that they are. The costumes before that were trying to find themselves, just like I was trying to find my outfits when I had lost the weight. But then I wore something, it's like, wow, this literally fits, and this feels like me. And I just feel that the 75 outfits, to them, like, this is who we are.
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah. You know what? I was, as Craig was saying, as he was speaking, I was thinking about that, and I was about to say exactly what you just said, Pascal. But of course, you used the right words, and you couldn't have said it better than this. To me, it's exactly that. So 75, and I don't think there's a coincidence that Alive was was the album that allowed them to break everything. You know, I think they were at that time confident, and with those costumes and that image on stage, I think it was just there that they were able to project the personas. Before, it was like they were trying, you know, they were not very, you know, they were not playing safe, and they were testing the water, some moves, you know, and looking at each other. But, you know, during Cobo Hall, as Pat was saying, you see Cobo Hall, man, and these four guys are four monsters, each one in their own world, you know, and those costumes, it was like their skin, man. They were not costumes or outfits. It was their skin.
Yep.
So as we said at the beginning, I think it will be extremely hard to pass through 50 years of the band's image evolution going year by year. But I think we all believe that the first 7 years of the band basically defined the trademark and iconic Kiss imagery. So what can you say about 76 Destroyer or 77, 78 Love Gun era? Do you think that these were the years the most memorable for you in terms of image and impact? Pascal, I'll start with you this time.
Okay, that one's hard to answer because I came into the band when I was a kid during the Destroyer era.
Okay.
So for me, that image was the image I was introduced to. So that I have an emotional connection to that particular era. And for me, the Love Gun outfits is my absolute favorite. And if you look at the old Barry Levine photos, they're so iconic, you know. Those Destroyer outfits, they're so iconic, you know. But if I try to put myself away from that, try to look at it more objectively in terms of the evolution of the band and where they were at the time. Oh boy, am I wrong in saying the following? In a sense, with the 75 outfits, Kiss reached the pinnacle of who they are, right? Now they're just trying to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So if I'm using the analogy of my weight loss, for example, so I have lost the weight, I found the clothes that I'm comfortable in. This is who I am, right? I've reached my goal. No, now I start lifting weights. Now I start building muscle. Now I got a chest. And now I'm looking for the abs. Now I'm trying to really push it and push it and push it. And I think with the Destroyer and Love Gun era, that was them really pumping iron, build those muscles, to get those abs, to not only be bigger than life, but to look the part at an extreme level. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You know, it's only about getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And, you know, as we know in history, when you blow a balloon, you blow too much, it's eventually going to pop.
Yeah.
And we all know what happened with the band, right? Yeah, exactly.
Greg?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely the same time as past because we're on the same age. For me, it was that 76 definitely. I got hooked on it then, and then when it progressed to 77, 78, it was the Kiss is number one on all the polls. It was like you couldn't forget about them. They were everywhere. They were on books. They were on toys. They were on cards. They were albums every 6 months. It was just forced down your throat, and either you liked it or you didn't. But if you liked it, you were hooked. It was a drug. You know, in a sense. And that was my favorite time. I mean, to me, they had new stuff out constantly. So if you started wavering and okay, I'm not like, oh, they're going to put bubblegum cards out. Okay, that's cool. And get your re-interest in it. So basically what they did was they promoted themselves from the base, you know, moved themselves up to another in the scenarios. And then it started with hiding the faces and such like that, right? They were bigger than life. I mean, it was such a great time to be alive. Honestly, it was something.
Yeah. Nicely said. Pat?
This is my absolute favorite era. I mean, that's for me, my Kiss. This is because I got into it in 77. So I think this is the pinnacle of Kiss. I may be a little biased by saying that, but this is absolutely my favorite era. And again, like Craig was saying, you couldn't miss them. You know, everybody and their mother knew Kiss, and if you were a Kiss fan, it wasn't a boring time because you'd go into the stores and you had to see something Kiss related. So it was a really, really fun time to be a fan. So, and I think the costumes were just like so perfect. It was perfection. The Destroyer I like a little less, but the Love Gun costumes, unlike past, they are my absolute favorite. Because to me, it's the gold in the rough Kiss, and that's why I went crazy when they reunited and used those costumes. I was like, oh, can't believe this is what I'm going to see.
Right.
So, emotional attachment to it as well.
Yeah, it's very hard to stay away from it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I like to talk about transition, as Paz was saying at the beginning. It's I see now after they got it with Alive, there was a big injection of money, and if last time we were discussing books and all of that, and if you get into a little bit of what was going on financially with the band. So then that's when they started to get production big time. And that was reflected also on their costumes. So you can tell that 76 on Destroyer, we might remember those photo sessions when they were recording Destroyer with Bob Ethring and all of that, and those photo sessions that were fantastic. You can tell that there's advice from people, outside of the band. Designers and fashion maybe ladies going around trying to find the best fit for each one of them, and but I think that with Love Gun and that era 77 78, that was over the top to me. Even though I wasn't into the band at that time, it is very hard for me to disconnect the meaning of Kiss to the Love Gun era image. To me, if someone comes to me saying, okay, show me one photo of the band, I have to show them one of the 77, 78 era, that photo session with the Mylar and all the stuff, or the Cubes, session over the top. And if you look carefully at the amount of costumes that they had at that time, 77, 78, it was not that much, but it was so cool, having the cross with Peter, Gene, he had those chains here in the chest. But look, Aces, absolutely my favorite, costumes of all. And Paul, it was top notch. So yeah, to me, even though I wasn't in the band at that time, it's memorable. It's very hard to disconnect from the emotions.
And as great as the Love Gun and Destroyer outfits were, was this the best that they could have been? Going any further than this, would the balloon pop, so to speak? Because as we all know, in 1978, Kiss was on top of the world.
Yeah.
With merchandise and their incredible stage antics, and the list goes on and on. But at the same time, cracks were beginning to form within the band. And the band created the solo albums. Then they came back with Super Kiss, the return of Kiss. And they moved away from the, black and white and silver look and more towards the four distinctive colors. So did the balloon pop? What's your impression of the Dynasty and Unmasked era costumes? Patrick?
You hit the nail on the head. I think the balloon popped by that point, because I even remember reading an interview with Peter in the 80s. There was this Kiss fanzine from France called Kiss Journal. And there was an interview with Peter, and he said he believed that 1978 is the year that destroyed everything. That's when the band imploded. Now, yeah, the balloon by then had exploded, and it was too Vegas-y. Now we look back at it now, and we have a different look at it, and for the time, that's how it was. But the end of the 70s in general were very glitzy, and Kiss became part of that. But it didn't suit their image. So Kiss became a pop band, unfortunately. Although I don't really mind Ace's costume and Gene's original version. The latter one I could do without, but it was too, like, they should have stuck to black and white, black and silver rather. And it's not for no reason. It's how can I say, you remember why Creatures of the Night they went back to black and silver.
Yeah.
Because they realized it was a mistake, and Unmasked was worse, so way worse to me, anyways.
Okay, Craig, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely 78 cracks are starting to form. They put out this Kiss meets the Phantom, and I think that was pretty much a seal of a deal. I mean, you know, they weren't showing up for lines and such like that. I think the balloon was leaking significantly a lot of air in 78. I think it popped in 79 when they came out with these costumes that are behind me that are Vegas style, cumbersome. Yeah, okay, they came up with the 4 colors. I kind of like that idea, but I don't think that these costumes are basically the look that they wanted. Like Pat was saying, it's not the black and silver. It's not the edgy tech. It's poppy disco stuff, right? Even though some of those albums have rocky tunes, it just I think they just lost their way on that, and I think that was the the nail in the head, or the pin that popped the balloon was, Peter and Ace were definitely leaving soon, right? So I think it was around that time, and then the cumbersome. I remember seeing them in 79 and coming out with those costumes and almost tripping over his capes, and they were like superheroes. Superman flying over to Captain America or something. I don't know, but it was until they started ripping things off and then getting back to the roots. There it was okay, but that's my take on it.
Okay, Claudia, what do you think?
Well, this is exactly when I got into the band, and so again, it's very hard for me to kind of disconnect emotionally. That was the first image that I've ever seen from a band, and but it's true. If you go back then, when I had the chance to buy Alive 2 and all of that, it grabbed my attention much more the 77, 78 era than 79. But again, the impact, at least in South America, with these costumes, with this image, was huge. And same thing in Australia, and same thing in Europe. So if you ask anybody in those continents, or some of the countries, what's the first image that they remember from Kiss? This is it. This is the Dynasty and Unmasked era. So of course, I was not fortunate enough, like you guys, to be exposed to the band 76, 77, and not even seeing the band live in 79. But I just want to ask you this question. So we're saying, okay, the balloon popped, and maybe that was the beginning of the end. But I remember, past you told me, and I don't know if Craig, if you were there, or Pat, but when you were at that show, when these guys, kind of appear on stage from those platforms with those costumes,
exactly,
that must have been magic, man. So come on to you now.
That's exactly where I was going with this. I got into Kiss in 76, the Destroyer outfits, then the Love Gun outfits. That's what I saw visually in print. But the first time I saw them live was Dynasty. And those outfits, the balloon pop. Those outfits were larger, were excessive. Yeah, but my God, to see them for the first time live in those outfits, oh my God, it was mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. So yeah, I definitely have an affinity for those costumes, because I still remember the feeling of them coming out of the ground, out of the floor, in those incredible outfits and the makeup. It changed my life, and that image is
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, exactly. That image is etched in my mind. It'll never go away ever. But again, what I said at the beginning, that these costumes, in a sense, was a part of the evolution of Kiss, but also in a sense a sign of the times and them trying to buck the times. I think that's what they were doing early on, for sure. It's like, this is a time for rock and roll music. Now let's take this music and let's put it up to 20. And they did that with their image. And with Dynasty, I think that image just went too far.
Yeah.
Again, continue my analogy of the weight loss and then the bulking up. After a while, it's not who I am anymore, and the clothes that I put on is not who I am anymore. If I give you guys homework, go put on something completely ridiculous, you're going to feel ridiculous. Why? Because what you're wearing does not fit with the image you have of yourself.
Yeah.
And I doubt very much at those times in '79, this was the image that the four members of the band had of themselves. Yeah. But they put this on because the outside influences were telling them, you got to do this. If you want to be larger than life, you got to be bigger than Love Gun, bigger than Destroyer. At what point? How far are you going to go? And they lost themselves.
Yeah.
During that time,
Yeah.
And now their outfits are a sign of the times directly. They look like a disco band with those outfits.
Yeah.
It just it was Kiss, but it wasn't the image that they have of themselves. Gene often says the makeup is a reflection of who we are. This was not a reflection of who they are or who they felt they were.
Yeah. And to me, that's this era. It's proof that they became more than ever a real product from the management. From Kiss Company or whatever you want to call it. I don't think that they had any say on the costumes that they wanted to wear or something. They were just like models, and someone else was doing the stuff for them,
Yeah.
And speaking of inflection points, so there's another big one that happened when Peter and later Ace left the band, and Eric Carr and Vinnie Vincent joined Kiss. So, and we say it is a significant milestone because these two new members added two new and fresh makeup designs to the well-known four iconic faces. So this is a big topic. So I would love to have your take on the impact on history of these two new makeup designs and two new members. Craig, this is your favorite.
Yeah, I definitely think that Eric Carr coming into the band was a breath of fresh air. I mean, the Hawk makeup, no. The Fox fit in. Definitely the Fox fit in with the band. It didn't look strange or out of place. Whereas Vinny, he was out of place with the Egypt thing, in my estimation. There was no kind of a correlation between Egypt and Kiss and the Wizard and all that kind of stuff. I don't think so anyway, in my estimation. Mind you, he wasn't around long enough for him to develop that character anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But no, definitely during that time, Eric had the biggest effect, I think, on the band at that time. And it just showed over the years that his contribution was definitely what they needed at the time.
Mm-hmm. But what you think?
I think, when Eric Carr first joined, I preferred the second version of his Fox makeup. The first one that he had with the Palladium, I liked a little less. I liked it better when it was like separated. That looked awesome.
Also run it,
Yeah, it was definitely like it was perfected. As far as Vinny, I'm one of the rare ones that I think I liked his makeup very much. I don't know if it was done intentionally or anything like that, but they needed somebody who looked similar to Ace in a way with the makeup, because a lot of people thought from far away that it was Ace. Because the makeup was similar. Ace does not have like a full black inside, like around his eyes or anything like that. So Vinny was similar. And I kind of liked the outfit that he had, and his contribution musically kind of brought Kiss to a more modern sound of the 80s, with Eddie Van Halen and Randy Rhoads being popular. It's like Kiss wanted to capitalize on that. So the Creatures era didn't last long enough, but it could have been successful had Kiss not done the previous mistakes that they had made.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Thank you. Husk?
I'm going to get killed for this one. All right. Claudio, you said something earlier that in 75, you found it difficult to differentiate the four band members. You saw them as individuals now, you know? I agree with you. I think that became harder and harder after Destroyer, because now we see a unified image of the band. So by the time the Unmasked era arrived with the inclusion of Eric Carr and then Vinnie Vincent, and don't get me wrong, I love Eric Carr. I love his makeup. No, I didn't like Vinnie Vincent's makeup, but the inclusion of the Fox and the Ankh did not work in the cohesive image that was Kiss. They were just trying to stay afloat. There was no unity in terms of imagery in the band. I felt the makeup after Peter and Ace left, whatever you could have put in there, did not work. And that's why, as much as people complain about Tommy and Eric Singer having the makeup now, I get the thinking behind it. They wanted that unity back. This is what Kiss looks like. And the proof that it wasn't, to me anyway, was Eric Carr and Vinnie Vincent in the Unmasked era, Creatures era. To me, that image just did not work.
Well, in my case, it's interesting because to me, Kiss has always had this visual strong impact on me, and sometimes like even surpassing the music. Of course, over the years, the music stays and the image kind of fades away. But in the case of when Eric Carr joined the band and later with Vinnie, I paid much more attention to the music than to the image. So that means that to me, it was not really so captivating, even though I have to say that, those few pictures and those few photo sessions with Eric and Ace, with the Unmasked costumes, it was really cool. I liked, the second version of Eric's, that was really, really cool, a nice design, but not as an entity, not as a group. Okay, so to me, it didn't transmit anything, nothing closer to the original lineup. And Vinnie, well, look, I recently got the box set, and I was going through, the goodies and all the stuff that it brings there. As a musician, chapeau, hats off. He's great, but as his image and his costumes and the kind of persona that they wanted to create for Vinnie, to me, it didn't work. So then no wonder why they decided to take the makeup off. So that's it.
Okay, that's a good segue. Let's take off the makeup, right? So this is what made the band so unique. It was the makeup, the creation of this unity, this larger-than-life band. And all that is gone. The makeup is gone. And yes, it brought in new fans in the 80s, absolutely. But let's talk a little bit about 80s Kiss and the non-makeup era.
Yeah.
What are your general thoughts about the Kiss costumes throughout the 80s, including Revenge, up to Revenge? Patrick.
Lick It Up, again, maybe the numbers didn't reflect that, but I believe that the Lick It Up era was a breath of fresh air for Kiss. You could tell that they felt re-energized and everything. Now, when Vinnie left and they got Mark St. John, and then things started to get a little more, animalized. I get what they were trying, but it looked kind of weird. Asylum, I'm not gonna even say anything. Crazy Nights was a little better, I think. And what I liked about Crazy Nights is they kind of renewed with the old. There would be references to the old days. Gene's face on one of his basses. bringing back some old stuff. So it's like they were kind of like trying to find a balance between the old and the new. Hot in the Shade, they look pretty good. I gotta say, I kind of like the vibe of Hot in the Shade. Revenge was my favorite era after Lick It Up. You know, but you could tell that they were comfortable in that look. So Revenge totally worked for me.
Yeah. Pat, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, regardless with the makeup on or off, Kiss has always been a visual band, right? Okay. Now, do you believe that when the makeup came off, regardless of the era in the 80s, be it Lick It Up, Animalize, Crazy Nights, whatever, Hot in the Shade, it was still Kiss?
To me, it was still Kiss when it was Revenge, yes, and Lick It Up, and a little bit Animalize. After that, Asylum, they kind of got lost, I think. They sort of, they were trying to be current with other bands, and it just didn't work. Thank God they canned that, and it was, I would say, Asylum and Crazy Nights was the lowest point. And yet on that tour, Crazy Nights, they sort of renewed with their past, and it gave them it helped them the transition. I think the transition should have happened right after Animalize, right there.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right, Craig. Overall, what are your thoughts about the '80s Kiss costumes or outfits?
Listen, as it goes into history, the beginning was, oh, who are these guys with the makeup? And now it turns to, oh, who are these guys without makeup? You remember that MTV section there where we feel totally fine. You know? Remember that? That summed it up for me.
100%.
Yeah. So I think it needed to be done. The costume wise, I don't hate the Lick It Up era. I think it was okay. Where they lost focus and lost, I don't know, they stole my mother her dress back from Asylum days. There's some really bad stuff there with the costumes and stuff, but as Pat was saying, I can't say it any better. You know, starting as a Hot in the Shade, and then, you know, they started playing old tunes again and getting a feel for if it, you know, it still works, and then the costumes were better, you know, and then they got the grunge section where they got the Revenge, and that worked for them too, because that was black and it was dark and it was back to basics without makeup, right? So I think that whole era, for me, it's like it's a do or die. If they take the makeup off and it works, then they have an extended life. If not, I don't think we'd have Kiss anymore. You know, so, but the costume wise, for me, Crazy Nights, Asylum could be a blip in my memory. But yeah, the latter two were great, and Lick It Up was fine. And the quality of the songs, I think, during Lick It Up was pretty good with outer influences and stuff. But I just remember that Gene thing in my mind until the day I die.
You're right. Yeah. Okay, Claudio?
Well, you know, speaking of, we have to remember that it's very hard for us to kind of sometimes make the distinction between the music and the emotional attachment and the image. But this episode, it's all about, you know, costumes and outfits and the evolution. To me, there's a whole, you know, between the Creatures of the Night, you know, era and Revenge. So whatever happened in the middle, to me, in terms of image and costumes and anything, it doesn't exist. Now, going back to your question, to me, it wasn't Kiss. To me, it was maybe a Paul's band more than ever. You know, Gene, a little bit of Gene here and there, but you know, not much on, almost nothing on Asylum and Crazy Nights and all the stuff. You know, he was lost. And to me, you know, Gene has a strong influence in the Kiss imagery and the music and everything. So again, just to make a long story short, no, I'm not captivated at all by the image. The only time that I got back really to pay attention to the visuals of the band was during Revenge. when I was actually looking at that, even the club tour that they did at that time, and and then Kiss Confidential, when they released all of that, that was fantastic, and there was no makeup, right? But it was so cool. It was so raw, so much energy. They could actually transmit what Kiss is all about. Crazy Nights, Asylum, all of that to me was it was another Poison or Bon Jovi or Cinderella or some of those guys, So it wasn't Kiss.
Okay. I've got so much going through my head right now. How could I make sense of this?
Only an hour show. Right?
Yeah, I know.
That's right.
I know. Okay, this won't make sense, but I'll try. All right. In my opinion, in 79, the Unmasked era and Dynasty era, I think the balloon popped, and at that point they stopped evolving. If the makeup did not come off, they would have stopped evolving. When the makeup came off, they continued to evolve. Okay. Now, I said that when Eric and Vinny put on the makeup, it didn't have that cohesive imagery that is Kiss. Now, here's where I think it gets weird. In my opinion, when the makeup came off, and that's why I asked you the question, Pat, in terms of was it Kiss? To me, regardless of what they were wearing, whether it be in the Lick It Up era, the Asylum, Animalize era, and then Revenge, to me, the image was always Kiss. It was always Kiss. Now, bear with me. Now, in 73, they were trying to find themselves, right? And they slowly started to add outfits to their outfits till they came to who they were with Alive 75. In my opinion, that's exactly what they were doing in the 80s. They were redefining themselves without the makeup. Who are we without the makeup? So the only point of reference they had were the times, which was the 80s. They knew nothing else. So obviously their costumes at the time was a reflection of the times of the 80s. So the entire era of the 80s was, the band trying a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Does this feel like me? No, let me try this. This is a little bit more like me. This feels less like me throughout the 80s. And I like the look of Lick It Up. They lost control with Animalize and Asylum, absolutely. And they were starting to normalize with Crazy Nights, definitely with Hot in the Shade. And the analogy of the Alive costume came to fruition with Revenge.
Yeah.
Finally, their evolution led them to this. Yeah. This is Kiss. This was 80s Kiss, Unmasked Kiss. And this is exactly why I was disappointed. I'm sorry, guys. I was disappointed with the reunion show. The makeup came back on. They just defined themselves. This is who I loved that era. I loved that lineup. And I know it wouldn't have lasted much longer than that. I know that. And I like to fantasize that it would. And imagine if it did, But imagine if it did. Oh my God, it would have been amazing, So I might be jumping ahead, but the evolution stopped again with the 96 reunion. But that's to be continued.
There you go. So we're in 96 now. So the band decides to reunite, and they picked, as Pat said at the very beginning, the 77-78 look as the image that they wanted to promote, not only to the old and diehard fans, but also to all of the newcomers. Okay, so this was Kiss. So do you think that choosing those outfits on stage was the most appropriate thing to do? Craig, why? Why do you think so?
Yeah, I do, because that era was a second and third generation boost. So when they put those iconic costumes on, and you saw it as a diehard fan or a fan that you were a fan of Kiss in those days, you brought your kids to it. You brought your wife to it, whatever. It actually happened. This is what it was. This is the nostalgia of Kiss. These things aren't legends. These things were real. So you could relate to that because you're reliving your heydays again. You're reliving
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
times that you had with the band and the memories you had. And Kiss is very smart with their marketing with nostalgia.
Yeah. True.
They are masters of that, that they know that you in a certain part of your time of your life, you knew where you were when that album, this album, that event happened, and they play on that. And this is, I think, why they took that approach with those costumes, because they know the demographics and they know who's going to buy the tickets.
Yeah.
So you're
Do
going
you,
to say
do,
that.
do you also think that these were the costumes that they felt the most comfortable with?
I
That
believe so, yeah.
that projected, each one of the personas?
I believe so. Yeah, I do. And basically, I took my kids. I mean, after years of explaining who Kiss was and they don't really know, bringing it into an actual concert with the 4 original guys, the 4 original stage set, blah, 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 brings justification.
Yeah.
And to that day, their fans or not, but it's generational. They wanted to move on to a different generation and get their money too, right? So that's my way. I mean, it actually needed to happen, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pat, you said you were very happy when they picked this era.
Again, it was my favorite era. And then you see them come out on them at the American Music Awards. I think that's when they showed up with it was like, oh my God, this is it. And I think they pretty much knew that it was the best era of Kiss. And I think by choosing to reuse the makeup, going back to that was a very smart move. Despite my personal attachment to those costumes, no one can deny that it was the golden era of Kiss.
Mm-hmm.
It was a smart move of them to do that.
Good. Basque?
Sometimes in my ethics class, my kids ask me for my personal beliefs. So I ask them, do you want my intellectual side or do you want my emotional side? Take, for example, the death penalty. My emotions say, yeah, I'm for the death penalty. My intellectual side says, no, I'm against it. Same thing with the reunion. Now, come on, Kiss is back in makeup with Ace and Peter. The Love Gun outfits, my favorite outfits. That was just mind blowing. It was incredible. Like everybody else, I was on cloud 9. I was so excited. I just wish that the stage had the stairs, like the original 77 stage. I wish they had that. That would have topped it off. That would have been perfect. So yeah, that was incredible. But for the sake of discussion for this episode in terms of the evolution, let's look at this more in an intellectual manner. I said earlier that with Revenge, their evolution stopped. Well, it didn't stop; it paused, because now it just became a legacy band. It became a nostalgic band. It was to bring back the memories of like Craig was saying, of their heyday. It was nothing new. It was what's old is new again, and it's for fans who never experienced Kiss in the 70s to experience them now. It's for Kiss, if people like us who experienced them in the 70s to experience them again. That's what it was with the marketing machine and all of that. It was a rehash of the 70s.
Yeah.
A rehash of the 70s. But in terms of the band evolving, at that point, it was a dead stop at that point. But there too, to be continued.
Yeah. Well, Kiss, we have to remember Kiss is a 70s band. Okay. So I think they made a smart move to pick it up where they left, with the Love Gun. To me, it was a very smart move, and to me a no-brainer. And I'm really happy that they picked that era to come back with Peter and Ace. And but then we all know what happened after that with Peter and Ace gone again. But on to you, Pasc.
Okay, it's interesting what you said. They picked up where they left off.
Yeah.
So my question to you, Claudio, with the 96 reunion, was, like I was saying, a pause in the revolution, or in your opinion, was that going to basically leading off continuing where they left off?
It was definitely not an evolution, definitely not. So they paused, and they kind of you go back, to your old girlfriend, and you try to kind of recreate the relationship with her. So it was not trying to find a new girlfriend.
Right,
No.
right. Okay, so your segue was a good one. Now Peter and Ace are gone, and the band, there was a farewell tour, and people were saying that was a farewell tour. It was, in my opinion, the farewell of Peter and Ace. I honestly believe that the band thought it was over. Where can we go from here without Peter and Ace? Then they realized with Eric Singer and Tommy Thayer that, hey, we can move on. We deserve to move on, and they did. And the band continued. Now, that's why I asked you that question, Claudio, because in my opinion, with the 96 show, the evolution paused.
Yeah.
Now I think we press the button again, and now it's continuing again. Now the band is starting to evolve again. So with that said, what are your thoughts about the costumes after the farewell tour? And again, we're talking generally now, the costumes up to this point.
Yeah, from 2004 till today.
Exactly. Patrick.
I think they're okay. At least they didn't do Dynasty version 2. Thank God.
Thank God. Thank God.
For Asylum.
Right. So you can tell that they tried to stick to the formula, which is okay. I salute them for trying something different. I'm one of the in the minority here with the makeup that I would have tried something new for Eric and Tommy, but that's not for me to say.
Okay.
But as far as the costumes, they're good. They're okay. Again, I salute them for trying something different.
Okay. Craig?
Yeah, I think that they're basically 2.0 of Destroyer costumes. If you remember Gene's costume in The Elder, it seems like there was pieces of every different kind of costumes. There was a cod piece from Creatures in the Night, and there was the chains from the Love Gun era. Then there was, we all know the story. But I think those costumes that are going with the Eric and Tommy are definitely variations of the originals. Because if you look at Tommy's with the V, it's kind of like Dynasty. If you're looking at Eric's costume with his jacket there, he has the lions that go up. That was on the Life 2 stage. There's subtle hints of past costumes in there, but I don't mind them. I mean, they're fine. It's just that I think they're just mixtures of old costumes.
Okay, Claudio?
Well, same thing. I don't want to repeat what Craig was saying. To me, they recycle. They kind of combine different things from different times. But what I do think is that thanks to technology and thanks to being on the road for 50 years, now I think the costumes are a good complement of the stage and the fire and all the stuff that wasn't there before, or it was maybe a bit primitive. But if we make the analogy with let's say Alive or 74, there was not much going on, okay, on the stage. They were smaller, and the venues were not that huge and big. So it was all about the costumes and the makeup and those 4 guys. Now I think the costumes are just a complement of the whole thing. And I have to say, maybe it doesn't have so much impact on the whole Kiss act as it had before. And to me, they are not memorable. The stuff that they've been wearing lately, it's kind of more of the same. That's why we had the spider, and all those different things, over the years for stage. Of course they're putting most of the resources on the stage and technology instead of the, and there's not much you can do, right? Because if you were the demon before and now you want to become like a monster, what else can you do, right? So, Gene, tries to keep the same style. Paul, same thing. And Ace and Tommy, kind of the same thing. So, and Eric, it's pretty consistent with Peter's imagery, same thing over and over again. So, yeah, not much to add to that. What do you think, Pascal?
I think I drank too much coffee because my mind is, it's whistling. All right. Wow. Okay. I think this is going to bring this episode full circle. I believe that, after the reunion tour, when Tommy and Eric joined the band, the band started to evolve again, to move forward again. But they were moving forward slowly, and they were playing it safe. And with the costumes, like you guys said, was a rehash, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's playing it safe. Now, if you look at the Kiss costumes in 2000 compared to now, if you look at the gap, that the costumes today are significantly different than the costumes 23 years ago. But those costumes slowly evolved. And again, they were evolving slowly, and they were playing it safe. They played it safe when they released the albums, Sonic Boom and Monster. It was safe.
Well, it's 25 years, man. It's
25 years.
It's a long time.
I know. But they continue to evolve. Now, here's where my points of view, it basically closes in here. So in the 70s, when you're watching a Kiss show, what was it about? It was about the stage show. I remember at the time, it wasn't about the music. It was about the show. And then we have 80s Kiss. It wasn't about the show anymore. Then it was about the music. And now, finally, we've reached the end of the road, the end of the evolution. When you go to a Kiss concert and you sit back and you watch the show, it is the music. It is the show. It is the costumes. It is one cohesive image for the first time in their 50-year career, where you sit back and take it all in. They finally reached the end of their evolution.
Good point.
Nicely said. Nicely said. Good closure, man. Awesome.
Should copyright that.
Yeah, that's right. That's awesome, man. That's good. No, man. So even though there was no, big homework to do on this one, you put some really big thought on that, Pascal, I have to say.
Coffee does well for him, eh?
Oh, yeah. I want to know what's in that cup, man. What's in my cup? All right. So once again, guys, thanks a lot for being part of this fun, discussion. When we were doing the stuff, we're discussing the questions. We never thought that there was so much ground to cover. We could keep going with this forever, each one of us with different takes. But again, Craig, Pat, thanks again, for being here, and it's been awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Claudio, it's interesting that whenever we talk about an upcoming episode for a discussion panel, we come up with a topic. We always say, well, what can we talk about?
Yeah.
And then we do the episode and we can't stop.
That's right. That's true.
Then we start to realize, oh, wait a minute, there's this aspect and there's that aspect.
Right.
And I think it's a tribute to the four of us when we come together and talk about the band. And like we've always said, it's always about our opinions and different perspectives. And that's what makes these episodes so special.
Absolutely.
But oh my God, the amount of information and different ways of looking at things. It's just so incredible, And Patrick, the whole in the 73, you could put their costumes, mix them up.
Oh yeah,
wow.
Awesome,
wow. Mind blowing. I in all these, I'd never thought of it that way. That was awesome. Awesome. And I really hope, our listeners, also get a different perspective from our discussions.
Absolutely.
Because that's what makes it intellectually so much fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So guys, once again, it is quite a challenge. So guys, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. And as usual, we're going to do this really, really soon.
Can't wait.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah.
So to the Kiss Army, what is your opinion on the evolution of the Kiss costumes over the years? tell us in the comments section or message us on talktome@kissarmynationpodcast.com. Until the next time, remember, never stop rocking. Take care, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, like and subscribe on YouTube or follow us on Spotify, Podomatic, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to make yourself heard. Leave us a comment on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. See you all soon, Kiss Army.